Local budgets have been bloated beyond probably what we've seen in the mid-2000s. It's gotten that bad again.
Because we are seeing some crazy things happen in Southeast Florida right now. And when I say Southeast Florida, I mean Miami-Dade.
For years, Miami was the crown jewel of America's real estate boom. A sun-soaked paradise where prices only seemed to go one way, up. Investors called it bulletproof. Developers bragged that demand would never dry up, and during the 2020s, it looked like they were right. Mansions flipped overnight, condos sold before they were even built, and billionaires from New York and California turned South Florida into their playground. But then, almost overnight, the tone changed.
A new report out this week shows that foreclosures are rising in South Florida. Last year, rents dropped in downtown Miami for the first time in years.
Given this issue, we cannot afford further delay in moving this conversation beyond promises or generalities.
The Miami housing market is shifting down and shifting down hard, with values officially now dropping on a year-over-year basis, and they could drop by even more over the next 12 months.
Listings started to pile up. Buyers vanished. And those same towers that once symbolized unstoppable wealth suddenly looked like warning signs. By mid-2025, Miami-Dade had more than 19,000 active listings, triple what it had just a few years earlier. Sales were plunging, and in July alone, 59 out of every 100 new listings were pulled before they could even find a buyer. It's the kind of market shift that nobody saw coming, a sudden freeze after years of record heat. But here's the question that everyone's asking: what actually caused it? Because this wasn't just about high prices or bad timing. There were deep, hidden cracks forming under Miami's glossy skyline, and now they're impossible to ignore.
Straight months of price drops, sales are down double digits year over year, and inventory still sitting at a 7-month supply.
The big news being that home values in South Florida are now officially dropping year over year. They went down minus 1.1% from April 2024 to April 2025. So this is big news, everyone. A lot of people said that Miami would never correct. A lot of people said that prices would keep going up here. Now they're going down. And the reason that these values are officially dropping and will drop by more into the future is because there has been an utter collapse in home buyer demand in South Florida.
I believe we can find our way through this complicated problem.
To understand Miami's collapse, you have to go back to the boom that made it possible. Between 2020 and 2023, Miami wasn't just hot, it was radioactive. The pandemic turned the city into a magnet for remote workers, crypto millionaires, and out-of-state investors who wanted sun, freedom, and no income tax. Homes that sold for $500,000 in 2019 were going for over $1 million just 2 years later. Entire neighborhoods transformed overnight. Luxury condos pre-sold before the foundations were even poured. Agents bragged that buyers were wiring deposits sight unseen. But behind that rush of money was something dangerous.
Home values are dropping in all of these areas as we speak. We're seeing some of the biggest declines we've seen in over a decade. There's no more buyers in this market. All those buyers who came in during the pandemic, they are now gone. Those buyers from New York, those buyers from Venezuela, they are no longer active. And the result is that the local population in Miami, who's completely priced out, is now being asked to shoulder the demand burden, and they're simply not able to afford it.
People believed prices would never fall. Everyone wanted in. Hedge funds scooped up hundreds of homes. Developers launched massive pre-construction projects. Even retirees turned into day traders in real estate, flipping condos like stocks. It was a city running on pure adrenaline. The problem? That growth wasn't built on stability. It was built on optimism. And when optimism meets reality, one small shock can trigger a landslide. That shock came in waves: rising interest rates, new insurance rules, and one tragic event that changed everything. Because what happened next would expose the weakest parts of Miami's billion-dollar dream. By early 2025, something snapped. Homes that once vanished within days now sat unsold for months. The inventory spike was brutal. from barely 6,000 listings during the boom to over 19,000 active listings in just 3 years.
You can see home sale activity in the 3-county Miami metro has plummeted by 50% from its pandemic peak. Home sale transactions are now down about 25% from their long-term norm, indicating just how low this buyer demand is right now. And the main reason why buyer demand is so low in Miami and why prices are increasingly likely to keep dropping over the next 12 months is because the market's just so overvalued. Prices in the Miami housing market are anywhere from 20 to 30% overvalued from their long-run norms, and those levels of overvaluation are not sustainable when the buyer demand is that low. So
Condos in particular flooded the market. For every 100 homes listed in July 2025, nearly 60 were pulled because no buyer ever showed up. Analysts started calling it the ghost market. Properties technically for sale, but effectively abandoned. Sellers refused to cut prices, buyers refused to overpay, and the whole system froze. Neighborhoods that had once been red hot, Brickell, downtown, Sunny Isles, started looking eerily quiet. Empty balconies, lights off at night. Rumors began spreading that some buildings were more than half vacant. At first, experts blamed high mortgage rates, but that wasn't the full story. The deeper problem wasn't affordability, it was trust. People started realizing that many buildings were ticking time bombs because a few years earlier, a tragedy on the coast had forced every condo owner in Miami to face a terrifying reality. Their homes might not be safe.
Investigation into the collapse of the Champlain Towers condo in Surfside, Florida. Investigators just gave us a major update showing what they've been up to for the past year. They have completed their testing and turned the entire warehouse worth of debris back over to the...
And the price to fix them could destroy everything. The real breaking point in Miami's housing story didn't come from interest rates or Wall Street. It came from something far more personal, far more haunting. On June 24, 2021, the Champlain Towers, South Condo in Surfside, partially collapsed in the middle of the night. 98 lives were lost in one of the most shocking structural failures in U.S. history. That single event didn't just shatter a building, it shattered an illusion. For decades, Miami's condo market had thrived on confidence, the belief that these glittering towers, no matter how old, were solid, safe, and profitable. After Surfside, that illusion disappeared overnight. Suddenly, the very foundation of Miami's skyline was in question. How many other buildings were hiding invisible cracks? How many associations had quietly deferred maintenance to keep fees low and units attractive to buyers? Investigations revealed a truth everyone had ignored. Countless buildings, some of them iconic, had serious structural issues that had been brushed aside for years. The state responded quickly. Florida lawmakers passed sweeping new legislation requiring mandatory structural inspections and fully funded reserve accounts for every condo over 30 years old. On paper, it sounded like a reasonable safety fix. In reality, it was a financial earthquake. Condo boards across Miami-Dade realized they were facing bills in the millions, money they didn't have. The only solution? Special assessments. Owners started receiving letters demanding tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes due in a matter of months. In some cases, those assessments reached staggering levels: $80,000. $100,000, even $150,000 per unit. For retirees on fixed incomes or working families just trying to stay afloat, these bills were impossible. Stories surfaced of people being forced to sell their homes or take out second mortgages just to comply. Some simply walked away, leaving buildings to spiral into default. And it wasn't just the cost of repairs. Lenders began treating older condos like radioactive assets. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac introduced new rules that effectively blacklisted any building that couldn't prove full reserve funding and clean inspection reports. That meant no traditional financing, no federally backed loans, no buyers with mortgages at all. Practically overnight, Miami's condo market split in two. One half still moving with cash-rich investors, the other completely frozen. Buyers who once lined up for these properties suddenly vanished. Realtors quietly admitted that showing units in certain older buildings felt pointless. Nobody wanted them. Prices began to tumble and desperation crept in. Some owners tried listing their units far below market value, only to find no offers. Others rented them out just to cover maintenance fees. The once luxurious oceanfront lifestyle now came with a heavy dose of anxiety. The Surfside tragedy had forced Florida to confront long-ignored problems, but it also exposed the fragile economics behind its condo boom. For decades, monthly dues were a selling point. Associations often postponed big repairs to keep fees attractive, betting that they could always deal with it later. But later finally arrived, and it came with a price tag few could pay. There were even reports of associations descending into chaos. Emergency meetings turned heated. Neighbors accused boards of mismanagement or corruption. Lawsuits began to fly. The tension wasn't just financial, it was emotional. People felt betrayed by a system that had promised safety and stability, but delivered debt and uncertainty. Some analysts argued that this was a necessary reckoning, that Miami's condo market had been living on borrowed time. Others warned it could trigger the largest wave of foreclosures since the 2008 crash. Either way, the tone of the city had changed. What was once a symbol of easy wealth and coastal glamour now carried a haunting question. How many of these towers are truly safe? And that uncertainty didn't just scare homeowners. It scared lenders, insurers, and developers too. Because once confidence disappears, money follows. The fallout from Surfside didn't just reshape building codes. It reshaped Miami's identity. The glittering skyline that defined the city's success had become a reminder of its vulnerability. But this was only one piece of the puzzle, because even if owners managed to pay their assessments and pass inspections, another storm, one made entirely of numbers and paperwork, was waiting to wipe them out next. If the new rules didn't break condo owners, the insurance crisis surely would. In the early 2020s, premiums were already climbing, but by 2025, they'd become unrecognizable. Units that used to pay around $2,500 per year suddenly faced bills of $6,000 to $10,000. Waterfront buildings were hit the hardest. Some insurers left Florida altogether, calling the risk unmanageable. The few that stayed jacked up prices. Associations were forced to raise monthly dues, sometimes doubling or tripling them in a single year. Combine that with new reserve mandates and higher assessments, and the math simply didn't work anymore. Rumors began swirling that certain buildings couldn't even get coverage at all, forcing desperate boards to self-insure, a financial gamble that scared away any new buyers. Suddenly, even cash buyers started walking away. Because what's the point of owning $1 million condo if you can't insure it? And this ripple effect didn't stop at condos. Single-family homes, especially near the coast, were hit too. Every rising tide, every hurricane warning sent premiums climbing higher. For the first time in years, Miami's dream